There are 8 changes, yes, 8, that are all favorable changes to the PACT Act. This is an absolute big win for veterans across the board. Today, it's going to be published on the 17th. I'm going to put a link down below of the Federal Register, and we're going to read all 8 changes. Here's exactly what it looks like. Now, the hotel room I'm in, the Wi-Fi has gone out, unfortunately, which absolutely sucks, which is why I'm on my phone and not my laptop. Side note, if you are not subbed to the Federal Register for Department of Veteran Affairs, you need to be. If you care about policy and VA disability, this is where all the creators and everyone else get their news fast. So sub to Federal Register, it's super easy, you gotta do it on a computer. Let's go ahead and read the 8 changes for the PACT Act. This is great big news. At the very beginning, it's gonna talk about the summary of the PACT Act, the background of the PACT Act, and we're gonna cover that after this. I'm gonna give you the meat and potatoes first. Now, there's a section 2 in there that says update. That's what you want to read. There are 8 of them. The first one, and I'm going to read verbatim, says clarify that under 38 U.S. Code, a medical exam and opinion is not warranted where the only participation in a TERA, which is toxic exposure risk activity, I'll cover that at the end of this, that is established is based on an entry in an exposure tracking record system, such as the ILER, the Individual Longitudinal Exposure Record, I said that wrong, you'll get over it, that does not corroborate or substantiate potential exposure to toxic substances, chemicals, or airborne hazards in service. That was a mouthful, that's number 1. Number 2, add breast cancer as a disease that the Secretary has determined has no indication of an association with herbicide exposure. Lots of herbicide exposure changes here. So it is included on the list of conditions not warranting a medical exam and under 38. Okay, number 3, remove renal cancer, kidney and renal pelvis from the list of conditions established pursuant to Title 38, for which a medical exam and opinion is not warranted when the only TERA is related to herbicide exposure. All right, so this is lots of this are in favor to our OG veterans, right? And they definitely deserve it. 4, fourth change, indicate that the expanded list of locations eligible for presumption of radiation exposure has been added to VA regulations. Absolute solid change. Expand who is eligible for that presumption for radiation exposure. Solid. Number 5, specify that for entitlement to spina bifida benefits under Title 38, covered service in Thailand means service in Thailand at any United States or Royal Thai base during the period beginning on January 9th of 62 and ending on May 7th of 1975, without regard to where on the base the veteran was located or what military job specialty the veteran performed. So if you're on this base, you are good to go. It's taking out your MOS, the MOS criteria there, and where you are located at on the base. Good change. Number 6, this is a great change. Add male breast cancer, urethral cancer, and cancer of the paraurethral glands as reproductive cancers under Section 406 of the PACT Act. Solid change. Number 7, remove references to lymphomatic cancer of any type due to a recent law change under the NDAA of FY23, so not this one, FY23. And the last change, number 8, is make non-substantive edits for clarity. Basically make it easy to read. And there we go. Those are the changes to the PACT Act. This will be published on the 17th. All of these are awesome. Really, really good changes. It's a huge win for veteran. Now, what I do want to talk about is the TERA exams and PACT Act exams, and do you have to submit a PACT Act claim or a TERA claim? We're going to go over all that right now. So 1, TERA means you were exposed to something, you have a current diagnosis, and the medical opinion is not linking it directly to your military service, it's linking it to your exposure. That exposure needs to be during military service. So for instance, the Navy has a lot of asbestos going on. So if you have a current diagnosis that is linked to asbestos, the medical opinion is linking the current diagnosis to the asbestos. That is TERA. It still requires a medical opinion, or a nexus that is medical in nature. That's TERA. It's not presumptive. TERA is not presumptive. Say it with me. TERA is not presumptive. Now we have PACT Act claims, which really don't exist. They're just conditions that are covered under the PACT Act, which is a piece of legislation passed by Congress, signed by our boy Joe Biden, okay, the president. Now, PACT Act's great. It's awesome. Helps out a ton of veterans. For PACT Act, all you need, the only thing you need are two things. The criteria needs to be met, and so for PACT Act, it is time and location. Were you at this place during this time? Yes, no. Very, very simple. At this place during this time, yes, no. If the answer is yes, let's move on to number 2. So meet the criteria. The second thing is, do you have a current diagnosis? So if you have a current diagnosis, you meet the criteria, you will be, I swear on my life, you will be service connected. Every single denial I've ever seen, ever, for PACT Act related condition has been because the veteran was not chronically diagnosed. Not at all. So get the diagnosis, meet the time criteria, you are good to go. That's PACT Act. PACT Act is presumptive, meaning the nexus is presumptive in nature, not medical in nature. Absolute big win. These 8 changes are super, super solid for veterans submitting PACT Act related conditions. Now let's get to the third thing, which is, do veterans need to submit a PACT Act claim or submit a TERA claim? The answer is no, those don't exist. All you do is submit the condition. So let's talk about sinusitis. If I'm submitting sinusitis, all I do is submit sinusitis. The VA will do VA stuff. I'm going to use another example, IBS secondary to PTSD, because here's what actually happens. If you submit IBS secondary to PTSD, the VA is going to do 4 things. 1, they're going to look at the secondary connection to PTSD, okay? So they will observe secondary. 2, they will look at IBS direct. Although you didn't claim it, they're going to look for it. 3, they're going to look at TERA, and 4, they're going to look at PACT Act. That's why if you're denied in your decision letter, you could be denied on 4 different nexuses, right? The link was not established for secondary, direct, toxic exposure, or presumptive. That's 4 denials roped into one, assuming you're denied. So all you need to do, veterans, listen, all you need to do is submit your evidence-based claim. That means with the current diagnosis, and you're good to go.